There's only one.
Messes.
Yeah. Yeah. We know about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be calling the March 31st, 2016 Board of Directors meeting for the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority to order.
Saturday night.
We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, but first I'd like to welcome the newly appointed District 6 Secretary, Jim Wolf, to our board today. Thank you so much for being here. And Secretary Wolf, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today? And first, I'd like to welcome all of, acknowledge the presence of Miami Lake City Councilman Nelson Rodriguez for being here today. Thank you very much, Councilman Rodriguez, for being here today. We welcome any and all input from all our elected officials as we are a member of this community. I would be remiss without first acknowledging today is the Tuesday after Memorial Day. Yesterday was a day of celebration and remembrance of those who have given their lives so that all of us could be here to express our opinions and work together for a better America as well. So I just wanted to mention that as we begin today. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown? Here. Mr. Ferre? Here. Mr. Gonzalez? Ms. Gutierrez? Here. Meyer? Mr. Vasquez? Mr. Walters? Ms. Weinberg? Secretary Wolf? Treasurer Rodriguez-Pina?
Here.
Vice Chair Fano? Here. Chair Martinez? Here. We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. It's an approval of the agenda. I'm going to, Mr. Director, I'd like to move some things around today on the meeting. Specifically, we have a shade meeting, so I'd like to move item 4 to the end of the meeting after we complete all the other stuff so we can concentrate on that. Does any member of the Board of Directors have any objection to that changing of the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, before you agree to the agenda, the item 1F is the Smart Plan video. Director Bouclet is here. We're waiting for Director Bravo to show up. So can we play that by ear? Because she's very close by.
Absolutely. As soon as
To move on with approval of minutes or my report, I'll be happy to do that to give her time.
First, I'd like to welcome Ms. Bouclet here today. I hope you had a wonderful long weekend. As soon as Ms. Bravo gets here, Director, we will wait for them to arrive, and as soon as you guys are both here, we'll put on the presentation, if that's acceptable to you. Yes. Thank you so much for being here today. I have no objection to that change to the agenda as well. Any other changes that anyone needs? Does anyone wish to move to, do I need to? Well, hold on. Council, if I've changed the agenda, do I need a motion to do that, or can I do that at the chair's discretion?
Your chair's discretion.
Okay. So now I declare the agenda closed, and now, Council, if you may begin with item D.
Do any members of the board have to report any conflicts with items on the agenda? Having none, moving forward. And that would, Ms. Gutierrez, are you on the line? I thought.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Did you hear about the conflicts?
I heard about the conflicts. I have no conflicts.
All right,
Other than I can hardly hear you guys.
Okay.
All right. Staff, can we work on increasing the volume so that Ms. Board Member Gutierrez can hear the meeting, please? If staff can work on that for us, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure, thank you. Any citizens' comments today? There he is.
No. Sorry.
Good afternoon, Nelson Rodriguez, Councilman, Town of Miami-Dade, 6601 Main Street. Just wanted to tell you on behalf of the Town of Miami-Dade, I know that we've been talking to several of you and Javier in reference to some extensions on and off ramps in Miami Lakes at 67th Avenue and 87th Avenue. I just want to encourage you to continue to look at those options. Traffic in Miami Lakes is a complete nightmare. As you know, most of you know, we are locked in, and we need your efforts to try to get some of those on and off ramps and see what else we can secure to move traffic along. Other than that, I just want to thank this board. I've had the privilege of having a behind-the-stage tour by Mr. Rodriguez, and I can tell you it's impressive. I wish you guys would do this for all the other municipalities and encourage them to come and look at what MDX is doing. Although we're not happy with the taxes, we understand where they're going, and his explanation was justified. But we're
You don't
talking
tell
tolls,
You understand?
correction,
Oh.
tolls.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a great
No, hold on,
afternoon.
Mr.
Question for you, and by the way, thank you. I'm glad to hear that you're, on behalf of the town of Miami Lakes, advocating for them, and I think you're almost a precedent setting for us, and particularly in light of our strategic master plan. What I would say to you and encourage other, I think, again, this is almost precedent setting, you're the first one, that you help us in our efforts, because we don't have all the solutions as far as, like your city government, we're always challenged with financing everything. We'd love to solve all the problems in the world. So what I would do as a treasurer, and ultimately the guy that has to be responsible, at least to this board, for the finances, I would welcome the opportunity to work with the town of Miami Lakes to figure out a way how some type of a cooperative effort can be done, whether it's a joint venture partnership. That will increase your chances exponentially of us contributing and bringing to the table in a true joint venture partnership. So I wanted to encourage you to do that in a joint venture fashion, and us figure out a way how we can work together, because, again, I would anticipate that after you, there'll be several other municipalities that say, yeah, us too want to be part of, whatever decisions you make in the future. So I encourage you how we can work together with staff and any other way that we can work with you to help alleviate the true problems that you have. And as city official, I understand you have to respond to your citizenry.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
Of course, Mr. Frey.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Rodriguez. Let me ask you a theoretical question, but taking advantage of your presence here. When I was chairing this board, the executive director and I went to Doral, and we made a presentation to Doral. We basically said what my colleague Rick has just stated to you. So I would like to just take the opportunity, since you're here, of through you to your board and to your mayor and to your board, to pose the following question. We don't have the money to do all these things. We just don't have the money. And the only way we do these projects, besides tolls, is if we can figure out innovative ways of financing. Now, if by improving your area, all of a sudden that's going to induce a tremendous amount of construction of projects that will make that specific area grow, would you have a major objection if we had the legislation to do it, to share the part of the growth, the future taxes? In other words, if we were to say we wanted 30, 40% of the growth, so that if buildings come out and you tax them, we would like to get 20, 30% of that, so that we could then use it to improve these road systems.
Well, I'd love to say yes, but unfortunately, Miami Lakes is built out.
Right.
And so one of the issues that we have is we're landlocked, we're built out, and we also have the landing zone for Opelika Airport, so we can't build up. So that's kind of the bind that we're in. We also have a major litigation lawsuit against the town of Miami Lakes, which I'm not going to go into now, but that could put talking about 20% of our revenue, of our tax base, could be going into this major lawsuit, but that's a whole other issue. But listen, in reference to partnerships, we're open to come to the table and see whatever we can do to come to a solution. If it takes some type of partnership, Miami Lakes has been, I would say, an innovator in trying to get partnerships with the other agencies in the state. We're 6.5 square miles, but you have an unbelievable council that's willing to work with other agencies to try to get things done. Again, I speak for my residents, and I'm sure I'm going to take the liberty of speaking for the council members. We are getting hounded every day about this traffic. I'm stuck in it every day. And I'm sure there's solutions. Working with traffic experts like yourselves and your staff, we can get it done. Now, if there's some revenue that we can jump into and try to recover and try to pass it along. I'm sure that our staff and our manager will definitely look at it and be open to addressing those issues.
And again, Councilman, I want to thank you again for being here today. And this isn't obviously, you were here, we were coming to speak to us on as a citizen of Miami-Dade County, you know, as far as future policy issues, that's something that can be discussed in the future. I want to thank you very much for being here today, and we need individuals like yourself who are actively involved and working to work with us in these issues. And again, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you. No? Not yet? Why? Oh, I guess Board Member Vasquez is going to ask to say something.
Before Nelson left the podium, first of all, my colleagues know I live in Miami Lakes, and I've known Nelson for a very, very long time. Nelson is one of the purest public servants I know. Besides serving on the council in our town, he is a firefighter for the city of Coral Gables, and he's a person that his heart and his intentions are definitely in the right place. And I've seen him and one of his colleagues, Tony Lama, kind of between them two, take the lead on the transportation issues in Miami Lakes. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have when we talk about transportation projects in Miami Lakes, for example, is I will hear our folks in Miami Lakes say, well, you know, if you guys are thinking about 67th Avenue and 87th Avenue, I think 87th Avenue is the one that needs to go first. And they don't realize that we have 67th Avenue, we have the ability to control a project like 67th Avenue, whereas 87th Avenue brings other agencies and other issues to play. And I would hate to see the town make the mistake that other jurisdictions make, where they kind of lose it all because of the fact that they feel that for the people, the priority should be 87th Avenue. And I really would hate to see our town lose the opportunity on the 67th Avenue project because of the fact that it is within this board's control and not subject to other jurisdictions. So it's an information campaign that is another area where you can really take the lead. No doubt about that. I can assure you that the town council is not going to allow losing a project. You know, what's this saying, you bite yourself to spite your face, or one of those. No, I mean, listen, we're looking for solutions. And if one of the solutions is opening one and not opening the other, until we can get to the other, we'll continue to fight for that one. But you know, we're not gonna shy away from finding true solutions. And if one of them is 67th Avenue, then we'll move with that until we can get into the next solution. And you know, again, opening that up, if that's a possibility in the future, that may alleviate a lot of traffic in that area. The reason for 87th Avenue is because 87th Avenue is the primary, is the one that's locked in by I-75 to Palmetto, and it seems to be the worst side of traffic. But I imagine that you know, any progress is some progress, is better than nothing, and I'm sure that the council will be happy to take on those challenges of figuring out how to get 67th Avenue opening. If that's the only option right now, then we go with that. You know, but definitely we have to educate our residents, and that's probably one of the biggest things. We do host a lot of town halls, we do host a lot of town meetings, and we try to get the word out to our residents all the time. So when that day comes, you know, I'll be the first one standing in line, backing you guys up to get that project done.
More than happy to provide you, your board, and your residents with as much information as we can to assist them in that information. Thank you again, Councilman.
It's a pleasure. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, and be safe. Okay. Ms. Bouclé, Director Bouclé, Ms. Director Bravo, I believe you're both here now. I think the timing is absolutely on schedule. So we're ready to hear your presentation on the Smart Plan video. Welcome our two distinguished guests here today. Thank you both for being here this afternoon.
Thank you, Chairman Martinez and member of the board, Eileen Bouclé. Eileen Bouclé, Executive Director, Miami-Dade MPO. We have a short 4-minute video, but before we show the video, we have some comments we'd like to share with you. Right. Primarily, in April of this year, the Miami-Dade MPO approved unanimously the adoption of the SMART Plan, which stands for Strategic Miami Area Rapid Transit.
And basically, over the past few months, we've gone over all the studies that have been performed in the past for rapid transit corridors, and basically from that and projected population growth, projected job growth, we identified the 6 corridors that should really move forward. And basically, we have an excellent opportunity. These corridors have all been studied at different phases, and right now, we have an opportunity to study all 6 at the same time, so that once and for all, we can compare them apples for apples with regard to cost, operating cost, ridership, and then we can develop a comprehensive financial plan for all 6, and then that can lead us forward into an implementation plan. So a lot of people have said, well, you can't build this all at the same time, and we know that, but the important thing is to have all the facts for all 6 corridors so they can be compared side by side, and then have a financial plan where our community understands that all 6 corridors will be built, and that's what leads us to an implementation plan.
So this strategy is something that's commonly used across the nation by other regions. I just want to summarize for you that this strategy is really advancing a program of projects. Right now in the Bay Area, San Francisco, between 2015 and 2019, they're advancing 9 transit projects ranging from bus rapid transit to commuter rail to heavy rail. Of those 9 projects, 5 of them received federal funds. In Boston, they're advancing a program of 5 transit projects, again, a mix of bus rapid transit, light rail, commuter rail, between 2015 and 2020. 3 of the 5 received federal funds. Again, in Denver, they're advancing 5 transit projects between 2016 and 2018, 3 of them federal funds. Again and again, Houston advancing 4 projects. So advancing a program of projects like the SMART Plan, which are 6 projects, is something that's been successful and what regions do to advance transit. So we're going to show you the video, and I think that I can click it here, and then we'll answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Strategic Miami Area Rapid Transit, SMART Plan. The Miami-Dade Metropolitan Planning Organization has prioritized the growth and expansion of mass transit in order to address congestion and provide alternate transportation choices for the residents and visitors of our region. As the most populous county in the state of Florida, with millions of visitors each year, the Strategic Miami Area Rapid Transit, or SMART Plan, identifies 6 rapid transit corridors that directly support the mobility of our future population and employment growth. A critical component of the plan is a network of express buses that will seamlessly connect the SMART Plan corridors with our existing metro rail system. The 6 rapid transit corridors identified in the SMART Plan have long been documented in Miami-Dade County's Long-Range Transportation Plan and is supported by the Miami-Dade Department of Transportation and Public Works and multiple entities. On February 16, 2016, the Long-Range Transportation Plan was amended by the Miami-Dade MPO Governing Board by a unanimous resolution that set as highest priority the advancement of rapid transit corridors and transit supportive projects in Miami-Dade County. Then, in April 2016, the MPO Transit Solutions Committee achieved consensus after a year-long process of convening numerous public meetings and hearings to address transit needs in our region. All of these efforts culminated with unanimous support and adoption of the SMART Plan by the MPO Governing Board on April 21, 2016. The adopted resolution endorsed the plan and approved advancement of the SMART corridors to Step 3, Project Development and Environmental Phase, in order to pursue federal and state transportation funds. During the project development phase, more detailed analysis will be completed in order to determine the most appropriate transit solution for each corridor. Project stakeholders, including the general public, businesses, and elected officials, will be engaged during the process. The current effort underway is being led by the MPO Fiscal Priorities Committee as its members are working to identify funding for the project development phase of each of the 6 rapid transit corridors identified in the SMART Plan. The Fiscal Priorities Committee will also develop a comprehensive financial plan to assure the funding of all SMART Plan corridors. Similar to other regions, this may involve a multi-year phasing plan for implementation. Beyond the SMART Plan is a SMART region. that is interconnected and builds upon the backbone of the existing transit network, meeting the needs of regional commuter travel patterns. This regional connectivity is supported by multiple transportation partners across the region. Another integral part of the SMART plan is that it includes a connected network of express buses that will expand the reach of the entire transit network. This comprehensive approach will allow the plan to support future population and employment growth in the region. To make the SMART plan a reality, the MPO Fiscal Priorities Committee will be meeting over the next several months in coordination with our transportation partners to identify the policy and funding framework necessary to advance the plan. In a joint statement, Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Jimenez, MPO Chairman John Monestime, MPO Vice Chairman Francis Suarez, and MPO Fiscal Priorities Chairwoman Daniela Levine Cava affirmed that there's much work ahead to accomplish our vision, but it all starts now with a unified voice and unified resolve to implement a plan that addresses all the needs of our community.
So we just passed out a map of the 6 corridors plus the the express bus network, which is an integral part of the SMART plan. On the back of the map is really the current funding for the planning and environmental phase that was approved to be advanced to priority 1 funded in the long-range transportation plan. At this time, we have identified funding for all of the environmental documents for each of the 6 corridors. In addition, this past MPO meeting, the board approved an implementation plan for each of the 6 corridors, which we will be focusing on land use scenario and sustainable land use planning and trying to make sure we're identifying the optimal land uses along the corridor so we can capture revenue through O&M, through financial districting along the corridor, and also the support of ridership for the corridors. So these will be concurrent efforts moving forward.
And, some have questioned the need to do new studies. And, the one thing we know is that we don't have enough funding right now to do all 6 corridors. So it's very important that we pursue federal funds. And in order to pursue federal funds, you have to comply with federal environmental laws. And that's why moving forward to step 3, the project development phase, is so important. I think it's important to look back at the research that as a community we've been doing over the past year. Last summer we went to Denver and they were in a similar situation, moving forward with multiple corridors. And the lesson that I took back from that trip was I was told that after they passed their sales tax initiative, they realized the sales tax didn't generate as much revenue as they thought. The cost of the projects was higher than what they anticipated, and so they, instead of building all the corridors at the same time, had to work together as a community and develop the implementation plan. But the one thing that was always guaranteed was that all the corridors would get built, and that's what helped them maintain their consensus and move forward as a community. So we're working with all our partner agencies, and including MDX, and to coin your executive director's phrase, this is going to have to be an all-of-the-above solution to accomplish these goals. But the one thing we know is that South Florida continues to grow. We all want it to grow. We want it to be a prosperous community, and it's important that we plan ahead for our transportation solutions. And last week, someone actually brought me an article, and this was an article from 1978 regarding the attempt a referendum to repeal the funding for Metro Rail in 1978. So funding had been approved. The project was going to move forward with 80% federal funding, and yet there was a referendum to try to repeal the funding for the project. And fortunately, that referendum was not successful. Metro Rail was built, and just think as a community, where would we be if we didn't have that mass transit system? Where would we be if we didn't have the people mover downtown? Well, certainly we wouldn't be as prosperous as we are. So planning ahead is very important. These projects are major investments for our community. They take time, but it's important that all of us together are committed to the process.
I'll start with Mayor Frey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you for your presentation. We now have Jim Wolf involved. One of the things that I love hearing in the jargon of politics, and it's an electoral year for the president, and the NRA is active, and they say guns don't kill people, people kill people. Well, people make the difference in transportation. And I happen to think that we've had one of the real star players, in my opinion, in the country with Javier Rodriguez. And now we have another star player with Alice, who moved from FDOT to the city of Miami to the county. And then when Eileen got on board, that was the third player that I think is outstanding. Now, I think, and I've been watching these guys for a long, long time. I've been on the FTC now for 7 years, and there is nobody better in FDOT than Jim Wolf. And we are very, very lucky to get Jim Wolf back into the saddle. And I think between these four players and the others that are involved, we're really going to make a big difference. And I just wanted to put that on the record, Mr. Chairman. Now, the other thing that I wanted to say is, so here's 2 weeks ago. Thanks, planners, that's you. But do we need more years of studies? Now, and Jim is a great guy, Jim McDonald, who's the chair of the League of Cities Transportation Committee. So we have to take this seriously. So what he's saying is, what he's asking, and I think it's important, you've already stated it, but I think it has to be repeated over and over and over and over again. That's $39 million, $40 million that we're putting into more studies. And the $40 million, by the time we get the first train or a bus, express bus moving, he says it's going to be 6 to 7 years. So we've been there before, we've done this thing before. So I really think that it's incumbent upon Secretary Wolf in particular, I'm going to put the burden right on him, along with the MPO and the Department of Transportation in the county. And MDX is going to be there to help for us to really move forward, not only with a vision, because, you know, a vision without execution is, as you know, is an illusion. You know, it's hallucination. That was Mark Twain's famous statement. Vision without execution is hallucination. And so we really need to get, not the vision, we've had the vision for 30 years. We need to get this really moving. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Vasquez and then Secretary Wolf.
I will yield because I think he mentioned him and I'd like to yield.
Secretary Wolf and then Mr. Vasquez. Thank you, board member.
Thank you. It's always a little embarrassing and something you have to live up to when someone says something nice about you, and the more important that person is, you gotta live up to that. But this is all very exciting, the SMART plan, and I read something recently about. I think Alice was right out of college when you started working on some of these projects. You're not even going to deny that, and I didn't say when. I didn't say when was right out of college. It was 3-4 years ago. It was a while. But they've all been around a long time. And do they need further study? Yeah, they do. They need better cost estimates. They need whatever it takes to attract the federal funds. It's going to be a challenge to fund all these. They're all needed projects. And I haven't looked through the funding versus what is proposed to happen. I look at some of the time frames, and they say 2018. You know, I'm going to be asking questions in detail about each project. What does that mean? What's going to be produced by 2018, for instance? And do we have enough funding to get that done? But the issue of do we need to do more engineering, there's no doubt about it. That's how we move these projects forward. That's how we attract the funding. And I'm very excited to see the county and the MPO standing together, saying the same thing about the same plan. And let's let's get behind that as a region. And I don't recall, as a northern observer in the years past, seeing this much unanimity about the need to go forward with a transit plan. And this is a great opportunity for us, and I fully support this.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Board Member Vasquez.
Real quickly, to your comment about the example of Boston, I think you said, and how one of the premises of this plan is that they all get built out. And a question and an editorial about that. The question is, does the plan require all of them to get built out, or are there, if this community decided to come together behind certain corridors that were perhaps should be prioritized more, would the plan still work if you phase them?
Well, yeah, absolutely. A phasing plan will come out of this. When I got to Denver and I said, well, you know, you didn't have enough money, everything cost more than what you thought, how'd you decide which projects to move forward with first? And they said, well, obviously the ones that we had federal funding for, which were the ones with the highest ridership. And so in our case, I imagine we would follow a similar suit, and we would also look at ease of implementation. If we have corridors where we have all the right-of-way in hand and there's a lower cost solution, then you know that's a matrix where we would evaluate those projects together and as a community set those priorities for a phasing plan.
And now my editorial comment about that is, and I've heard other elected officials mention this perhaps a little differently. I think we have the leadership in place now, like the mayor mentioned, but I think until that this community comes together with a disposition to do what's right and to where perhaps some of the political agendas are dropped, because we have a commission comprised of 13 members, each represents their constituency, each is obviously going to push for their constituency, but the minute you have all those agendas coming together, then you start coming up with ideas that only work if it all gets built out, and I think that's where we start running into problems. I think until this community starts identifying one of these plans and saying, let's move one, let's show that the system works, we're not going to build the confidence among the people, and I think that's what one of our biggest challenges. So that's just the editorial I wanted to add there.
Any other comments? Treasurer Rodriguez-Pina.
First of all, thank you, ladies, for being here. I appreciate your time and everything you do for this community. As you may or may not be aware, we're in the midst of our strategic master plan, and I think that is a very significant commitment that we're about to make, and obviously in light of your decision, the collective decision, to do this, I think it's important that we're sensitive to that so we don't overlap efforts, right? So this body here is going to make significant decisions that are going to constitute commitments way into the future. So I think, and I'm sure we have, you know, able staff that's coordinating on a regular basis, but I think it's important that to the degree that you all can or become familiar with what our discussion is, and obviously we will do the same. I know we have able representation at the MPO, Mr. Ferre, that at times a bit shy, but he's articulate to convey our point. So just wanted to make that a point that, you know, we're about to make our decisions in the next X months, but I think it's important that the more we know about each other's plan, the better we can make a collective decision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments? I guess I'll go last. First, ladies, I'd like you both, thank you both for being here. You have actually were kind enough to brief me on this plan several weeks ago in detail, and I truly appreciate the time you took with a guy who is not an engineer and to explain it in a way that even I could understand it. And Director Bravo, I think it was important that you note that the requirement of having some of these studies isn't because we want to reinvent the wheel, it's because we're required to be able to even qualify for federal funding. And at the end of the day, we're competing with multiple jurisdictions, multiple states and cities all over the country that are trying to get these extremely valuable federal dollars. And these projects are going to require that. So it's understandable and admirable that you were able to explain that to this board and to the community on why some of these things need to be done. And I commend you for that today, because I think that's important so that our community sees why. I think we've made it very clear over the last, since essentially the 8 years I've been here, that we want to be an active partner with you all. I know Executive Rodriguez speaks highly of working with the MPO and with the mayor and with the cities to make sure this is done, and we are going to be an active participant in any way you need our assistance. We are there to support you. The reality is we cannot build ourselves enough highways to satisfy our transportation needs. We need to work in a holistic way to work all together. And again, I want to thank you guys for taking time out of your extremely busy schedules on a day like today. Hopefully, it won't be too bad, the traffic on the way out of here today, for taking time and being here today. And if you have any comments or questions for us, we'll be glad to answer them now as well.
Well, I think we were hoping we'd get a resolution of support for the SMART plan from the board.
I don't, is it moved by Board Member Vasquez, seconded by Vice Chair Fano. Discussion is, it's open for discussion. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, discussion is closed. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
all.
ladies. Moving on, item 2, council.
Approval of summary minutes?
Has everyone moved by Mayor Ferre, seconded by Mr. Gonzalez, who's just arrived? Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, discussion is closed. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Council, Mr. Gonzalez arrived late. I don't think you asked him for declarations of conflict.
Yeah, I have it written down. I was going to do it before consent agenda, but
No conflict.
no conflicts. Thank you.
Perfect. And welcome, Board Member Gonzalez, today.
Thank you.
Next item, please, council. We're going to, no.
Executive Director's report?
We can do the report, and then we'll skip item 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. Welcome, Secretary Wolf. I look forward to working with you, continuing to work with you. And on behalf of staff, we will be eager to sit down with you and talk to you about MDX and give you the briefing that all the other board members get. So when you have about 4 or 5 hours, we'll set it up. Just kidding. Anyways, a status on a number of projects. And it's very timely that Director Bravo and Director Bouclé spoke about the SMART plan and that we did endorse a resolution. Status of 836, we got 2 major projects ongoing, one in procurement, one that was just issued notice to proceed last Monday, which is 87th Avenue interchange, and then the one that's ongoing, which is 836-28 between Red Road and 17th Avenue. The goal of 836 is to eliminate operational deficiencies, prepare the facility for express bus service. The SMART plan, which is rail-based, also has a bus concept. And that bus concept, in my opinion, is what bridges the gap between the issues we have today and what we really want for tomorrow as we do these studies and try to pursue federal and state dollars. So those projects are well underway, 836-28. You've seen the bridge work ongoing at 37th Avenue, Lejeune Road, and 57th Avenue. We have been issued all of the permits by the Department of Transportation. We're working closely with District 6 staff, primarily at 27th Avenue, where we're going to have a divergent diamond interchange. On 836-29, as I mentioned, the notice to proceed was issued last Monday. The contractor has started to mobilize and has already begun clearing operations on that interchange. On 874-10, which is the extension of State Road 874, we're in partnership with the Department of Transportation with the Florida's Turnpike Enterprise. They were actually building the bridge over the turnpike. The design-build firm that we selected that will actually make the extension using 128th Street is completing its design. We are actively completing our right-of-way acquisition. Construction is slated to begin along 128th and the connections to the turnpike in June of 2016. So there will be a lot of active construction on our system this year. The consolidated or the centralized customer service center, our staff at Toll Operations and Finance have been actively participating with Florida's Turnpike, Tampa Hillsborough, and Central Florida Expressway Authority in the development of the system. Just recently, they conducted a financing workshop. The vendor was able to show and prove the system. We're very happy. They also submitted a draft data mitigation plan to mitigate everything over to the new back office. They've selected a site in Orlando, which will be the main walk-in and call center, but they've also started site selection processes in Tampa, Miami, and Boca, where there will be the same type of sites where customers can walk in and resolve any kind of toll issues that they have anywhere in the state. Next Monday, as an informational item, next Monday, Tuesday, the Florida Transportation Commission will be holding its meeting here at MDX. Board members are welcome to attend. It's open to the public. I believe the meeting started at 9 a.m., if I'm not mistaken, here in the boardroom. At one of the agenda items, the vendor is going to be making a presentation on integrated corridor management. One of the examples is what we're looking at and what we've been doing on 836 as part of our construction exchange information that we're actually working with Miami-Dade County Public Works Transit to try and get the intelligence and the dissemination of information out to the community. The last thing I did want to report on is the strategic master plan. The master plan is well underway. I've asked Louis to make a very brief presentation on an update, but rest assured, the SMART plan that was presented by the county and our strategic master plan are in sync. As far as our hubs, as far as our express buses, our XT lanes, express and technology lanes, they all sync up. It's not about building new highways, it's about being more efficient and getting better use of the assets that we have. So with that, Louis.
Good afternoon. I'm going to be 5 minutes or less in an update of where we were since the last time that we met. So the last time we met, we spent a lot of time on the plan, and we received your polling information about which projects you thought were good, which ones did not fit, this one's fit, and so forth. We've taken the last month or so to put it all together and begin to craft what this plan looks like. And I think today just gives you a little glimpse of what the future. So, last time we looked at which projects made money, which projects did not pay for themselves. We had a list of those that were marginal in between and which ones would need some sort of subsidy. So all of you have given us very, very thoughtful responses to the questions that we asked. And we also did the same thing with the executive staff of MDX to see where the thinking was, if there was alignment. So in this chart, it shows you the percentage of the members that were voting for each of the projects. And I don't expect you to read all of these things, but you can see that this is the board voting, that the first 11 or so projects, there was unanimity between the board. There was some then like 80-some%. And there really were only a handful of projects that fell, 5 projects that fell either 50% or below the lines. And I'm going to show you which ones those are in a minute. The staff, there was some unanimity and there was some, healthy discussion from the perspective that they're doing. Some of them have caveats, if we could resolve this issue, if we could not resolve this issue. So to show you now the areas of alignments, these are the projects that both at the staff level and at the board level, the consensus was over 50% of the voting was good. And that was the Stabler 112 ramps on 37th Avenue, the westbound ramps over 112 to 36th Street, the second one was with the bridge, the ramps on 97th Avenue on 836, the whole 37th Avenue corridor, the MIC, 836 Intermodal Center at 100th Avenue, 836 Extension West Intermodal Center over in Kendall, the 2 development parcels, the XT lanes, the 924 interchange on 67th Avenue, the ramps from 112 to Okeechobee, which were, I think, seen by valid, but they're tough financially. The use of the truck viaduct extension as a connection back to the 830 through 826 from 112. Further extension of 112 out to the Heft. And at the end, one's project is the ramps on 37th Avenue on 836. And then the water taxi system, as you can see, we're at the bottom. And obviously that was an area of alignment in the negative, so that you see. So basically, a lot of these projects, just by this test, we considered that are good forward-thinking projects to consider, and the water taxi and the ramps on 37th Avenue have a lot of questions. Projects that there was significant differences between the way that the board and the staff saw it was the 2 intermodal centers on Miami Beach, the XT lanes on Okeechobee Road, the 836 express lanes, the US 1 reversible lanes, the MIC at the Port of Miami, the I-90, and then the 2 express lanes into Miami Beach, either using MacArthur or Julia Tuttle. So what we've done, based on that information, divided it up into, I think as the chairman say, the low-hanging fruit. And you all said, let's try to do this as fast as possible. So we divided up into Tier 1 projects, which are the ones that there's pretty much unanimity and are somewhat easy to develop. And you can see the list here that I read, about 10 projects. And then ones that go a little bit longer, which are the ones that are going to take a little more time to complete 37th Avenue extension and the ramps across the whole resolution with 112 westbound. We then have Tier 2 projects, which are the ones that need a little bit more work, the intermodal centers. Tier 3, which are these become more difficult and much more complicated, which includes the US 1 reversible lanes, and the Tier 4, which are the extensions out to the Heft and 995. Now, we're going to have the ability in the next few months to put this all into play, but how does it actually, where is the crux of the strategic plan? When you put that all together and you add the capital program, here's what it looks like that you would have to execute. That during the first 3 years, about $600 million worth of projects, followed by the next 2 years, about $300 million worth of projects. And then you have about $2.9 billion worth of projects in those Tier 2, 3, and 4. So a lot of stuff. So collectively, the whole program will be $3.9 billion. What's important is getting started. So the first 3 years is about $600 million worth of work. Then it's $300 million worth of work. And then it's $3 billion worth of work. So it's a ramp-up period. There are some challenges on the financing because the revenues are not exactly matching yet to the capital, but a lot of it is distorted by one or two projects. US 1, the MIC, for example, the MIC is in there as a very high cost, whether that happens or not, and we're not showing any revenue. So there's a couple of them that will really change this around. But here's the major implications that I want to leave with you as a board. If at the end of the day, projects will come and go, you'll execute, is what this board's ability to execute larger and larger programs. This is what the community needs. And I think that's at the crux of this. So what it shows is you're going to have an accelerating capital program from your current projects that you're doing, and you're accelerating as you are, but you have to be able to get, in the next 5 years, to be able to put out on the street, to meet the capital programs, $200 to $300 million of capital program per year on the streets. So that is easier said than done. That's probably larger than the county's putting out. So a lot of these other programs, this is much larger. So this is like a fantastic goal to be able to, how does MDX restructure itself? And then it has to keep growing, because then the balance of the plan, to be able to execute this stuff, you got to go to $600 million per year. So in a 10-year type program, 10 to 15-year program, that's what MDX needs to begin to restructure itself to be able to execute. And the sequence will wane as the studies go forward and the details and all of the stuff that you go through. It is a significant challenge. There's still a lot of significant work to be done on the revenue side to select with the sequence, and that's what we're working on. On the other side, there's a large number of these projects that can be reprogrammed almost immediately. Some of these interchanges can be introduced into the capital program almost from day one. So you'll have a mixture of projects that you can put into the plan, get executed, they're self-financing, you can jump on it while you're working on the other projects. And there are a number of the large ticket items that require a lot of further stuff. The MIC, I think it's one of the ones, and that has been studied, and it's really more of, is it going to happen for MDX or not? The US 1 corridor, which the board indicated that's something that we should consider more. It's one of those that, doesn't produce enough revenue. But yet, the other day I was stuck on US 1 for hours, and said, I wish that was there. The XT lanes, in which we're proposing going step by step with a pilot program that need further detailed studies. So at the end of the day, I think that's if you take all the work has been done, the crux of the strategic plan will manifest itself in how to restructure the agency itself from within to go from this kind of capital program to this level of capital program. And if you do that, then we're going to be very successful at developing the overall plan that we're shown here. So that's my report, Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Louis, and that concludes my report, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Any questions at this time? Sure. Mr. Walters?
The $3.9 billion program gets funded. What does that mean? Does it keep up with growth? Does it mean traffic is going to flow smoothly? What exactly would we be getting?
Great question.
If you look at the strategic plan, it starts addressing a fundamental point that this board has set in motion for a long time. We're not going to build ourselves out of congestion. We need to be smarter with the way we use our assets, provide access, eliminate congestion or pinch points, and introduce other modes. Those other modes are manifested in this master plan by the hubs and by what we're calling the XT lanes or the express lanes on our facilities that allow another mode to function on our facilities. The other part of the XT lanes is the technology side from an ITS standpoint. Do we prepare our facilities to have a lane that in the future, we call them managed lanes today, and we manage it with money, pricing, price-managed lanes. In the future, the idea could be that it's managed using technology, connected vehicles, autonomous vehicles. Are we preparing our facilities to accept that? So I guess the short answer is we're never going to get ahead of the curve in development. I'll say that. But if we can manage our congestion, then I think we're keeping up with being a world-class city.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Frey, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make 3 comments. Into the real world. District 6, in the next 5 years, has a work program of $1.4 billion. Okay? Now, what we're talking about is matching that, to put it in perspective. And what we're talking about is beyond 3 years, going up to $600 million a year. That's doing twice what District 6 will be doing. I mean, just to put it in perspective. So that's my first comment. My second comment is this. I've been on this board for 10 years. In my opinion, this will be the single most important decision that we will have made. If we make it. I'm not saying that we're going to all vote for it, but if we make what we're in effect saying is that we want to go from a relatively small agency to an agency that will be at least as large as Orlando and probably larger. And that's a big jump. So I think we have to take into account, the implications of what this thing is.
And board members, if I may, when we talk about making decisions to prepare ourselves to be able to let this amount of projects, that doesn't necessarily mean this has to be a bigger person-type agency. The elements of the Expressway Authority, the MDX, if anything comes out of this strategic master plan, is that if we want to affect all of these projects and put them out on the road, we're going to have to continue to partner like we have in the past. That partnering might require us to take the lead in many things, or passing it along to another agency to take the lead.
And that includes P3, so I haven't finished. I've got my third point to make.
Okay.
Yeah, and my third point is basically this. The MPO unanimously passed a resolution saying that transit is the highest priority. That means that they're going to be pushing that all money goes into transit. Now, we just passed unanimously to back that.
Correct.
All right, so the point that I'm trying to make is that when in the future, Javier and everybody in MDX and the MPO go to Tallahassee to see the secretary or the governor, he's going to say, well, you guys passed a resolution and this is your plan. And so that means that there's not going to be as much money available, I think, for road building as we've had in the past. Now, who do you think that responsibility is going to fall on? Well, let me put it to you this way. In the past 10 years, 91% of all new roads in Florida have been toll roads. Let me repeat that. In the last 10 years, 91% of all new roads have been toll roads. And by the way, I've asked Mark Reichert, Jim, to back that up because we keep making that statement in Tallahassee, and the secretary makes that statement. And I haven't seen that statement was documented about 7 or 8 years ago. I haven't seen recent documentation of that. But the point is that whatever we do has to fit with the MPO strategy. So therefore, whatever we do has to take that into account. And I think it's important because we're not a self-supporting agency. We are in toll roads, but we have to get the MPO. We have to get MPO approval. With us agreeing with the MPO, to me, the most important guy in this whole operation is sitting right over there. His name is Ed Regan, because he has to come back and give us justification for doing this. Otherwise, we're not going to get financing. I don't care, and we're not going to get any partners because we can't do this alone, as we all know. This has to be a partnership deal, as the executive director said. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments? Secretary Wolf.
Yeah, I'm the new kid around here, so I'm sure I've missed a lot of debate. But I looked through the package, and staff did not support express lanes on 836, even though the data says it's revenue positive. Yeah. And I'd like to know why. And maybe we can talk separately sometime after the meeting. But I'm a big supporter of express lanes. I think it's a long-term investment. And as you said, Javier, maybe we use them for something different in the future if you do an XT lane. And it's also a network opportunity with our partners. I looked at the SMART plan. It has an overlay, the map of express bus. A lot of these express buses are running on express lanes. And this was another opportunity for us to be involved. So I'm sure there's good strategic reasons why staff didn't support express lanes on 836, but I would like to hear them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's an easy answer. Our express lanes on 836 are our shoulders. We don't call them express lanes. We're converting the shoulder, whether it's during the peak period or the entire period, to be express lanes for buses. Right now, we're thinking that it'll be during the peak periods. That is the network connectivity, because we're limited in space on our facilities. The other component of that is we just closed our system from a financing standpoint, from a toll perspective, and introducing a toll within a toll was just simply not something that we could support at this particular time. Those were the two reasons. As far as the network connectivity, a toll road connecting to a toll road, the connectivity was easier. But we'll get into the details when we sit down and talk.
Right. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you. One point about the strategic plan is that we need money to accomplish everything we've been studying. And P3s are not going to be the answer to everything. And I think there needs to be a focused approach to our in this, whether it's state officials or county officials, and maybe at a regional level, that says we need to be creative about raising capital for these purposes. There are 100 ways, I'm sure, and smarter people than I can probably figure it out. But just to mention one, you could raise the bed tax by very little money and provide the money you need to build that. That helps our tourists get from point A to point B. It helps our community without dipping into their pocket, which we've already seen that they've already contributed to improving their roads by the toll roads. It's not going to be that route. And I believe that P3s are going to have limitations, and we're going to have opponents to P3 as well, because they're going to say, you know, at 5 p.m. on 95, it costs $12 to go on the express lane, and if there's an accident, we stop. completely. So I think the a component of this needs to be, and I don't know if there's a committee that will do this, or some of us that would lead an effort to try to generate federal grants, state grants, a creative way of raising money for the two major issues in this community, which is water and sewer and transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Treasurer Rodriguez-Pina.
Mr. Gonzalez, thank you for opening up that capability, because it's exactly where I was headed. Mr. Chairman, board members, what I think, since this is all very significant decisions, and obviously, given the fact that our budget is $220, $240 million, that's to give us perspective as to what we're looking to expand into this major business. If we were looking at it as a private sector, we'd be looking for our return on investment, we'd be looking for partners or equity, some type of a loan, and consider all these factors, so that this is no different than how we're approaching this, how we should approach this. So I think a lot of thought needs to be given in light of this SMART plan. How is it that we find these partnerships, whether it's P3s, and again, as Mr. Gonzalez said, there's a lot of smart people, staff, and collected from other agencies. We need to look at our capabilities to be able to raise the funds. So I would propose, Mr. Chairman, some type of an internal committee that we can look at this on behalf of this board that says, okay, you know, we've analyzed all these 5 or 6, 7 options, whatever the options are, whether they're P3s or some type of strategic partnerships, and it's going to take time. And here's what we really can do, and here's what we can afford, and here's what we're going to give up. You know, we're going to give up equity, or if this was a private sector, to give up equity in exchange for this, and then look at the return on investment. So I think we need to, these are all great opportunities. I think these are all present wonderful times for us to become a greater contributor to this community. However, it always comes down to money, and I'm not sure that we'll have the solutions. And while I respect the professional staff and the presentations, it really requires some in-depth thinking, and I would propose some type of ad hoc committee to be able to consolidate the options of our financial capabilities going forward, if we can afford the $3 billion or just 600 or only nothing. So that would be my food for thought.
Thank you. Any other comments? Luis, I'd like to thank you for the presentation. And I think you need to take all of the statements you've heard from the board to heart. At the end of the day, we are all going to have to work together. We're not going to be able to get everything we want based on our strategic plan unless we find significant ways to raise revenues and funds. We cannot satisfy all of the needs and desires that we believe on our wish list, for lack of a better word, on the backs of our clients. It's just not going to work. The amount that we would have to increase tolls would be incredibly significant, which is why we constantly talk about working as holistically and working to get individuals, and why we need to find different revenue sources, whether it's the state, the federal government. Partnerships with local municipalities could be ways to facilitate that. So I agree with all the terms here, but at the same time, we cannot build ourselves out of our transportation problem. We need to be strong supporters of public transportation. It's just simple numbers. There isn't enough space to expand the highways far enough to go on the east-west requirements alone to satisfy the amount of people we have now, let alone the incredible growth we're going to continue to see, because let's face it, people want to live in Miami-Dade County. They want to live here because of our weather, because of everything else. And if you look at polling, one of the #1 concerns that most voters have is transportation. So it's clear that it's on the minds of individuals, and you're hearing more and more elected officials talking about, instead of attacking us, they're talking about working with us. That's a big change. You know, you're seeing a dramatic shift in the need to understand that what makes MDX effective is the fact that we're able to get projects done, and they're going to need to work with us, and that's something we cannot ignore. If you recall, if many of us who've been here for 8 years, there were years that basically the only time an elected official came to MDX was to take a shot at us, was to beg us to do something or to find fault in something we would do. They would say privately, we really like what you're doing, we're really happy with your services, but then publicly they would criticize us. You're seeing, as we saw today, we had representatives from the MPO, we had representatives from the mayor's office, as well as a city council, a councilman from Miami Lakes, all talking about how positively about MDX. That's an indication that we've turned the page. and that we need to continue to understand that we're all going to need to work together. And yes, maybe there are things we want to do that we will not be able to do, but we should think big with the hope of getting to that level, but realizing that there may be limitations, and that's a direct result. And Treasurer Rodriguez-Pena, I will take absolutely into consideration your consideration of creating some type of an ad hoc committee in the near future to discuss possible funding sources that we have not thought of. I think that's an excellent idea, and we will move forward with that in the near future as well. Thank you for that suggestion. And Board Member Gonzalez, thank you as well for your position. And I agree with you. P3s isn't the only answer. We're going to have to find other ways as well. Moving on the agenda today. Any other comments? I apologize. Not to be rude. Any other comments? Thank you very much. Let's move forward. Moving on to the Treasury Report, Mr. Rodriguez-Pena.
Well, let me get my friend Marie to give us a report. I don't know if you all have any questions, if you have reviewed the particular budget, or I'm sorry, the April report. If anybody has any questions in particular, please let me know, and if I can't address it, we'll get staff to address it. But as you can see, we continue to stay on track, actually having a better than expected month, but let staff talk a little bit about that. So with that, Marie.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. As you indicated, this is the April report, 10 months for the fiscal year 16. Our revenue is $193 million, continues to show positive results that we discussed throughout the year. Half of the positive results relate to fees and collection fees. As far as the expenses are concerned, we posted expenses and interest expense at $109 million. That's a little bit less than the budget, about 1.7, or a little bit less than 2%. So overall, I think the results are consistent to what they've been all year long, and they're positive results, sir.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for myself or Marie? Okay. If not, Mr. Chairman, that concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Moving on. Mr. Director, the committee reports will be handled on the general regular agenda. Thank you. The consent agenda, since it is a consent agenda matter, Council, if you could go through them all, and then we can vote on them as a group.
Absolutely. Consent agenda, travel approval and ratification. May 4th through the 6th, 2016, attendance by Board Member Ferre at the Transportation Research Board 15th International Conference on Managed Lanes in Miami, Florida. June 13th through the 15th, 2016, trip to Daytona Beach, Florida by Executive Director Rodriguez to attend the FDOT Design Training Expo. July 18th through the 20th, 2016, trip to St. Pete Beach, Florida by Board Member Weinberg and Executive Director Rodriguez to attend the 2016 Transportation Summit, Floridians for Better Transportation. Lastly, July 24th through the 26th, 2016, trip to Boston, Massachusetts by Board Member Ferre, Board Member Meyer, and Executive Director Rodriguez to attend the IBTTA Summit on All Electronic Tolling, Managed Lanes, and Interoperability.
Anyone wish? Yes, Ms. Secretary.
Mr. Vasquez requested to be added to the Boston trip. Included in the consent agenda.
I have no problem with that. We'll make the friendly amendment to add him to that as well, Council. You're welcome, sir. Anyone wish to move the item?
Move.
Moved by Mr.
I'll move it.
Mr. Brown, seconded by Mr. Treasurer Rodriguez-Pena. It's a consent agenda. Does anyone have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, discussion is closed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Moving on. Regular agenda, Council.
Regular agenda. Item A, approval of fiscal year 2017 annual budget and reserves and funding requirements endorsed by the Budget and Finance Committee on May 5th, 2016.
Move the item.
So move.
Moved, seconded. Moved
Second.
by Treasurer Rodriguez-Pena, seconded by Mr. Brown. Item is now open for discussion. I think we vetted this item fairly in detail at the Budget and Finance. Would you agree, Mr. Director?
Yes, sir.
Does anyone have any questions for staff on the items that were not answered at the Budget and Finance?
And for the board and for Secretary Wolf, the agenda item report summarizes any actions that came out of the workshop and of the committee meeting. So the changes, the moves, are all documented in the agenda item report.
I apologize, Secretary Wolf, you weren't here for that. Would you like some kind of a presentation from staff on this matter, since you were not here?
We will be briefing Secretary Wolf on the budget.
Very good. Thank you.
And I should have mentioned that at first, and I do apologize. Hearing none other discussion, discussion is closed. All in favor of item A, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Moving on, council.
Item B, MDX procurement contract number RFP 16-04, financial auditing services. Approval of the Technical Evaluation Committee recommendation to select the number one ranked proposer, endorsed by the Budget and Finance Committee on May 5th, 2016.
Who wishes to move the item? Moved by Vice Chair Fano, seconded by Mayor Ferre. Item is now open for discussion. Mr. Rodriguez, who will be speaking on behalf of staff?
Ms. Cordero is prepared to discuss this item.
Good afternoon, Mr. Cordero.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much. We did put out a request for proposals, soliciting proposals from experienced CPA firms to provide our annual financial auditing services. On March 22nd, we received 3 proposals from BCA Watson Rice, Keefe McCullough and Company, and Moore Stephen Lovelace. All proposals were deemed responsive and were submitted to the Technical Evaluation Committee for evaluation. The proposal from, the selection is based both on technical scores and price proposal. Proposals were required to have a minimum of technical scores in order for the price proposals to be open. The proposal submitted by Keith McCullough, and I'm sure I'm killing that name, did not meet the minimum technical score for the price proposal to be open. So the price proposal of BCA Watson and Moore Stephen Lovelace were open, and Moore Stephen Lovelace was ranked number 1 based on the technical scores and the price proposal. This is a 3-year contract for a contract and not to exceed contract amount of $210,000.
Thank you. Who, do we have an overseer? Who was the overseer?
oversight was Mr. I'm sorry, I can't. Mr. Walters, I apologize.
Mr. Walters. Mr. Walters, you were there. Do you have any further comment on this item?
No, there were 3 very well-qualified firms. 2 had had previous experience with this agency. To tell you the truth, I think any one of the 3 could have done it. It's a very high-level competition.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Walters or for staff? Hearing none, the item has been moved and seconded. Discussion is now closed. It's now open for vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Hearing, thank you. Please note Ms. Gutierrez says aye as well via telephonically. Next item, please, council.
Item C, MDX procurement contract number RFP 16-01, inspection and reporting services, $4,650,000 maximum for the 2 contracts. Approval to enter into contract negotiations with and award the contracts to the 2 highest ranked proposers, Trans Systems Corporation Consultant and Marlin Engineering, endorsed by the Operations Committee on May 11th, 2016.
Wishes to move the item? Moved by Mr. Vasquez, seconded by Ms. Gutierrez. The item is now open for discussion. Mr. Toledo, I believe you'll be speaking on behalf of staff, or will be Ms. Cordero?
Thank you, sir. 4 proposals were received in response to this RFP. We were to select 2 firms to serve in a pool. The proposals received were from Marlin Engineering, Network Engineering Services, doing business as Bolton Perez and Associates, Trans System Corporation Consultants, and Volker Inc. All proposals were deemed responsive and submitted to the Technical Evaluation Committee. The 2 highest ranked firms were Marlin Engineering and Trans System Corporation. The recommendation is that those 2 be selected so that staff can enter into contract negotiations with those 2 firms. Each contract would be negotiated for a 4-year term, for $1.3 million each for the 3-year term, or the 4-year term, There is 15% small business participation and a 15% local business participation in the contract. And Mr. Walters also served as the board oversight, although unfortunately because of scheduling conflicts, he was not able to attend the Technical Evaluation Committee meeting.
This is another item that was thoroughly vetted, I believe. Correct, Mr. Rodriguez at Operations. Great. Does the board have any questions? Hearing no questions, I will close discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the item passed unanimously. Next item, Council.
Item D, MDX procurement contract number RFP 16-03, traffic and revenue consultant services, $2,500,000. Approval contract award to the sole respondent CDS Smith, Inc., endorsed by the Operations Committee on May 11, 2016.
Who wishes to move this item into, Mr. Meyer, will you move this in, seconded by Mr. Gonzalez? The item has now been moved and seconded. Discussion is open. Who will be presenting on behalf of staff?
That will be me as well.
Ms. Cordero, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. An RFP was released in February 2016. As customary, we sent it to all of our registered vendors, advertised in 3 local newspapers, had a non-mandatory pre-proposal conference in where 2 potential proposals attended. However, on March 29th, we only received 1 proposal from CDM Smith, which is also the incumbent. Staff reviewed the solicitation documents in the process to ensure that nothing may have impeded competition, and didn't find anything there. In addition, we reached out to the other firm that in attendance at the pre-proposal conference to inquire as to why their decision to not pursue the contract. Their response was really a business decision that took into account their available resources at the time to put together a proposal, as well as the size of the contract, which they found was too small for them, and they did not want to compete with the incumbent. We went ahead and, not finding anything wrong with the process, we went ahead and evaluated the sole proposer to make sure that he met the minimum required technical score in order to be considered. They did, and the Technical Evaluation Committee submitted a recommendation to go ahead and award the contract to CDM Smith as the sole proposer. Mr. Myers was the board oversight on this process. Because of our scheduling conflict, he was not able to attend the Technical Evaluation Committee meeting, but there was only 1 proposal being evaluated as well, so we took that into account when consulting this with him. It would be a 5-year contract for a not-to-exceed contract amount of $2.5 million.
Any questions from the board on this item? Mr. Director, I actually do have a question. Obviously, there's always a concern when we only got 1 person bidding on a project. That's not to, in any way, shape, or form say that these people would not have ultimately have won the contract nonetheless. Is there a concern on behalf of staff that perhaps if we had written the RFP differently or something, are you comfortable with just moving forward with the only 1 person bidding on the contract?
Mr. Chairman.
We always discuss here, we always love competition breeds improvement, so that's,
Mr.
again,
Chairman,
no knock on anyone.
Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned at the Budget and Finance Committee, or the Operations Committee when this was discussed, I'm comfortable with the scope of work that was written. I'm comfortable with the process for the RFP. I am comfortable with the write-up of the reasoning why we didn't get the other proposer to submit. I also remember that Mayor Ferre asked a question on the scoring, and if you look at the scoring, it's not like if we made it very easy. We sent message even to the incumbent that we're always looking for better and more consistent work.
Thank you. Secretary Wolf, please.
I'm always disappointed at a lack of competition, but I will note this is specialty work that is done by very few firms in the country, and it's actually not surprising.
Thank you for that information, Secretary. We really appreciate that. Any questions based on the comments from the Secretary or from the Executive Director? Hearing none, discussion is closed. All in favor of supporting the recommendation, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the item moves forward. Council, next item.
Item E, MDX work program number 83611, State Road 836, I-95 interchange improvements. Approval of eminent domain parcel resolution 15-21R and 15-22R, endorsed by the Operations Committee on May 11th, 2016.
Who wishes to move this item? Moved by Mr. Gonzalez, seconded by Ms. Gutierrez. Item is now open for discussion. Who will be presenting for staff? So so this is you, Mr. Toledo?
Yes, yes.
All right, we got it right this time.
Good afternoon, board members. In line with previous items that we have brought to this board in the past, these are 2 more partial resolutions for the 83611 project, which is the 836 I-95 interchange project. And these are for the partial resolutions to allow us to begin negotiations on parcel acquisition. If negotiations were to fail, we'd go into eminent domain.
Right. Any questions for Mr. Toledo? Hearing no, discussion is closed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the item passes unanimous. Informational items are in our package, I believe, Mr. Director, correct?
Yes, they are, and for Secretary Wolf, we typically add these reports in the package. Any questions, by all means, reach out to us. Every contract that's executed, every supplemental agreement, the small business and local business performance of our vendors is also documented in those reports, so that's just an...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before we break, since I'm sorry I was absent for the MPO report, there's really nothing to report other than what...
Well, actually, the executive director indicated that the smart video was essentially the report. I apologize, Mr.
That's
If you
right.
want to follow up, Mr.
No, but I just do want to make a statement.
Sure, go right ahead.
I mean, not about the MPO, but the Florida, the Florida Transportation Commission will be meeting in Miami-Dade County next Monday and Tuesday. And I just want, Cliff, you were asking, the afternoon meeting is a pretty well-packed discussion meeting. Senator Jeff Brandeis, who is, as you know, the lead person in the legislature on transportation issues, will be there. Secretary Boxall will be there on Tuesday. The meeting Monday afternoon will be from 1 to 5, and it will be at the District 6 Control Center, the TMC. And there will be a dinner that evening at 7 o'clock in downtown Miami, and we'll be meeting at the Sheraton Hotel at the airport and taking Metro Rail, which everybody's objected to, but I said you're going to do it anyway. So we've got the FTC and staff going on Metro Rail to downtown. We tried to go to Tuyo, but they're closed Monday night, so we couldn't do it. So we found another restaurant. The chair and the executive director are invited to that dinner. The next day, the meeting will be here. It starts at 9 o'clock? And it goes till 1 o'clock, and Secretary Boxall and a lot of Senator Brandeis and others will be in attendance, and I would invite all of you to be a part of this. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that information, Mr. Frey. I really appreciate it. Anyone else? Great. The time is now, I have to read this out loud for the shaming we're about to go into. So the time is now 5:28. We are about to have an attorney-client session in accordance with Florida Statute 286.011 regarding the litigation-style Electronic Transaction Consultants Corporation versus Miami-Dade Expressway Authority, case number 12-46272 CA40 in the 11th Judicial Circuit in and for Miami-Dade County. The session is estimated to last 30 to 45 minutes, and the following people will be in attendance at this meeting. Myself and the following board members who are present. Vice Chair Shelley Fano, Treasurer Rich Rodriguez-Pina, Board Member Arthur J. Meyer, Board Member Vincent T. Brown, Board Member Alfred L. Gonzalez, Board Member Faris A. Ferre, telephonically Board Member Maritza Gutierrez, Board Member Javier L. Vasquez, Board Member Cliff Walters, Board Member Secretary James Wolf, the MDX attorneys, Carlos Zaldivar and Francis Steelman, and outside counsel Joe H. Sorota and Michael Ehrenstein, as well as Executive Director Javier Rodriguez. These proceedings will be recorded by certified court reporter, and at the conclusion of all of the litigation discussed, the transcripts will be made part of the public record. All those individuals who I have not named, we will, instead of asking all of you to leave the room, we will adjourn the meeting and go into a private session in the boardroom next door. So at this time, I would ask that we adjourn I will strike that. I will now call a recess to our current board meeting. I'd ask all the individuals that I have named and as well as staff to arrange the telephonic communication for Ms. Gutierrez so that we can go into the adjoining room to have our shade meeting. Thank you. Do I have a quorum yet? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, I do. Okay, we will now reopen the public meeting. The attorney-client session has now been terminated, and members of the general public are now, who are no longer here, were allowed to hear this public forum. At this point, can we move to adjourn? Move to adjourn. Moving to adjourn. We're good? Motion adjourned. Thank you. I will reserve any chair comments until the next meeting.